All right, welcome back to Getting Past the Premium, everybody. This is going to be a really fun episode with a friend of mine, Mike Brown with Unbreakable Wealth, and we got to know each other through elite coaching with Dan Martell. Shout out to Dan and his program. Big believer that everybody should have a coach in life to help you in areas that you want to get better. But Mike is going to come at our industry from a really cool perspective that I'm pretty excited about. I'm not going to spoil anything, Mike, but I'll have you maybe give your background real quick for everybody listening, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, thanks. And super honored to be here, and definitely a shout out to Dan. He brings amazing people together, and I'm honored to count him amongst one of my best friends, and just brought so much to my life. So always want to give my dude a shout out. But yeah, thanks for having me. I guess I'll start with I grew up in Midland, Texas, which becomes important later. And I always wanted to do two things. I wanted to be in the Navy, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur from a very young age. And so I went to the Naval Academy. I ended up flying jets for the Navy for many years as kind of my first career. I got out of the military in 2011. I moved back to my hometown, and I went to work in the oil and gas business for a mentor. And at that time, he told me that it was the best time in the history of oil and gas to be in oil and gas. And he was right. So I moved my family from San Diego to Midland, Texas, which is nowhere you necessarily want to be, but an incredible land of opportunity. And he was right. It was the best time in the history of oil and gas to be in oil and gas. I founded my firm with my best friend from the Navy. We flew a bunch of combat missions together and thought, man, we do pretty well under pressure. Why not start a company together? And we founded our company in 2013. Really in a time that was very much a gold rush in the Permian Basin of Texas, and then wound up selling the assets of that company in 2019. Kind of went through a mini retirement and then started coaching around the same time. But you know, my story really starts the day I sold my company. And the bottom line is, the day I sold my company, I thought I'd never be unhappy again. I had finally done the thing I was supposed to do. You know, I worked hard in school. I tested myself in combat. I came back, I started, and I exited a company. Like, I did all the stuff that society tells us to do in order to make ourselves happy. And yet all of a sudden there's still this giant hole inside. And I'm going, oh no, like if this didn't do it, what am I even doing here? And, you know, in that process, I became an angel investor in like 2013. I have invested in dozens of different companies. I've mentored founders, but I did not have a cohesive investment strategy. And what that ended up doing was I was taking on a lot more risk than I should have been. Yeah. And so eventually I acquired a distressed e-commerce company. I put way too much on the line. 2 years after my exit, I'm waking up going, I'm more stressed out than I've ever been. I'm losing $100,000 a month, lighting money on fire with this turnaround. And how did I get here? And for me, that's really the bridge to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, you have some great content out there on that particular investment. I think I'm assuming that's the one that you're referencing in a lot of what
Totally.
you talk about. Which, you know, you're very open about those things, but I think everybody can learn from. But then just to frame it a little bit about what you're doing today, because I think that'll be impactful on our conversation, how we're going to relate it to, you know, the industry as a whole. But give everybody an idea what you guys are doing at Unbreakable Wealth.
Yeah. So, you know, Unbreakable Wealth is very much born of my own experience. So there I am post-exit going, how did I wind up here? Like, I built you know, I consider myself an investor first and a entrepreneur second. Like, I was a professional investor for almost a decade, building 9-figure portfolios for our private equity partners. And like, how did my personal finances, if I can build these portfolios on a professional level, like, why was I not able to take my own good advice in my personal financial portfolio? And, you know, through that work, I uncovered that a couple things. Number one is, if information was all that we needed to be successful, to be a lot more rich people, because there's plenty of good advice on how to structure a portfolio, but there's a reason we don't follow that good advice, right? And that comes down to our mindset and our subconscious patterns that run in the background and cause us to self-sabotage, which is exactly what I was doing. So in reversing that process and going, okay, what are the beliefs? What are the underlying subconscious beliefs that are keeping me from making the better decisions that I need to be in order to protect my family and my legacy? How can I help other people find and uncover those beliefs and then set themselves up for success? And now on the backside of doing that work, now we can build a portfolio that serves the life that we actually want to create. So that's what I'm doing with Unbreakable Wealth. I have one-on-one and group coaching programs that help people uncover really the underlying purpose and what the life is that they actually want to build. And then we can back into building a wealth plan and an investment strategy that actually is tailored to that. But I have no dog in the fight as far as like what people invest in, as long as it's doing the thing that they set out to do. And that's what I really want to help people do.
Yeah. And so just again, to put a pin on, which I want to pull out that little nugget that you said there. I'm probably going to butcher it because I was trying to remember it as you were talking. But, you know, if information was all it took, there'd be a lot more wealthy people, right? And that goes to everything, I feel like, right? You know, and you think about, there's information is out there anywhere. You can Google about anything, and there's experts that, like you know, on your Instagram, and you do a lot of content of just basically giving away, you know, everything you're going to teach. But that doesn't mean it's easy to execute on. And that doesn't mean that there aren't other factors that you need somebody's help in going to execute. And I want to highlight that because our clients, everybody listening, your clients are all the same way, right? They can go get the information somewhere. It's just that they're running a business every day, or there's a limiting belief they have, or there's something that they need help overcoming. And that can be you helping them get there, right? And I think it's
Yes.
powerful.
Yeah, totally. So here's the way I think about it, right? Is that a service provider, a investment advisor, financial planner, wealth manager, whatever that might be, they should think of as an employee, a really high level employee. But we wouldn't start a company and then start hiring employees without a CEO that crafts the vision and says, okay, this is where I want to go.
Yeah.
Now I can go out and find the people to get on the boat and help me row in the correct direction. Right. But most people reverse that process, and they go to their service provider and go, hey, what should I be doing? And the fact is, they don't have the information to be able to provide that solution. So then they're going to put you in a one size fits all box and go, hey, maybe it's this 70-30 equity split. Like who knows what this is? You're a peg in a hole at that point. But what I want to empower people to do is really be the CEO of their own financial life and go, here are my goals. Here's why these are my goals. Here are the outcomes that I want to create. Now let's build a plan that serves those values.
Yeah, that's so spot on. So spot on. Okay, so just to be clear then, you are running, or you're doing this on a coaching basis. So people are paying you a fee to essentially act as a coach or advisor for them. You're not managing assets, you're not selling insurance products, you're not doing anything like that. So, you know, your revenue is based on the fact that people are going to join your programs to get better, and pay you a fee to do so, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it really is. I would say my programs are like 70% mindset, asking really hard questions, understanding what drives us at a core level, and then 30% tactical. And I really believe that you can't properly execute on the tactical and strategic portion until you understand those broader overarching questions. And so, you know, my passion really is asking deep questions to unlock inner wisdom that people already possess. Like that is what I think is one of the coolest things, is to just ask a really great question and see the aha go off in someone's eyes and go, oh man, I never really thought about it that way. Okay, great. Now we've started to reframe the problem. Now we can go out and execute on the tactical.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and I'm really drilling into that because, again, I think in the property casualty, even a lot of the financial advising side of the business of our industry as a whole, um, that gets overlooked for whatever reason. And I think it's because we have a product to quote unquote sell, that the engagement with the client just looks different. And we've been at our firm, and in a lot of the conversations we have on the show are trying to break that mindset down for people that are sitting in a producer seat or a, you know, advisor seat. Because at the end of the day, the way that you're showing value to your clients is to bring them really good advice, to have the hard conversation, to, you know, have a conversation that not everybody else is having in the industry, that business owner, that person looks at you and says, wow, nobody's ever asked me. I never thought about that way. And wow, that changes my perspective on, why I buy insurance or how much I buy or this and that. And so you're doing it without even having a product to sell, which I think is so somebody has to make a conscious decision to increase their budget to pay for something that you're going to do for them that they could see outsized value in, right? Or return in. And
Yeah.
again, I want everybody to kind of use that as a framework as we go through this conversation. I don't know if you'd add anything to that or whatnot, but
Yeah. I mean, the way I think about it is, 100% a couple of things. You said early on, like you think that everybody should have a coach. And here's why I think everybody should have a coach is because someone else has already been there. Someone else has already made the mistakes. And so as an entrepreneur, as a founder, our greatest asset is time, right? We can always go out and make more money, but we can't create more time.
yeah.
So the best leverage that we have available to us is paying for somebody else's playbook, someone who has already made the mistakes, been there, put in the blood, sweat, and tears to earn that knowledge. And now they are giving it to you at a fraction of their price of entry.
Yes.
Right. And which is literally what I'm doing. I'm giving people a playbook I wish I had 10 years ago when I started investing.
Yeah.
Right. And they can shortcut my decade of pain, learn from my mistakes. I also did a few things right along the way, and they can learn from all of that too. Right. And now they're just shortcutting the time problem and they can get back to work in their primary business, which is, increasing their income, growing their success that way instead of concentrating on all of these things. And I'll give you like a really small example. Like a lot of times I call these like TikTok tax tips, right? People come and go, hey, should I be hiring my kids into my business? I go, all right, so you can pay your kid 13 grand a year in business, which if you're in the highest tax bracket means maybe you can save, 5 grand overall in your taxes. But you've got to do all of this documentation. You've got to make sure you're in compliance if you come and get it audited and all of this stuff. Like my ability to earn 5 grand elsewhere than trying to hire my kid into my business is so much better served just going out and making another sales call or trying to grow my revenue or investing in marketing, whatever it is. So it's really helping people find the 80-20 of like, what are the things that I actually need to be doing that are worthwhile? And what is noise? And there's so much noise out there. And really, I view it as like, let me give you a framework to filter out the noise.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. I think it was Cody Sanchez I heard on a podcast where she said, all day long, I'll pay for somebody else's 10,000 hours or something like that, which is so true. It takes you 10,000 hours to become an expert in anything. And if you can pay for access to somebody that has spent that amount of time, which is exactly what you're saying, I mean, it can be invaluable. And I think that business owners are in that spot when it comes to all the different areas of our industry, right? Whether it's, taking it to your level where you're coaching them to hit their financial goals or protecting their business from financial loss, which is what we do on the property casualty side. They a lot of times don't have the time to spend learning it all as far as what do I need? What's the limits? They're relying on somebody to help come and educate them. And that's, again, if we come at it from that perspective, we can really shift how we're viewed in the industry. And so that's maybe where I want to get your perspective next. I mean, you're putting a lot of content out, you're marketing to different people, but you're having to shift their perspective and maybe even convince them that they even need a coach at this point, right? So talk through a little bit of that, your process and how you do that and how you're shifting those perspectives.
Yeah, I mean that's a very astute point, right? Is that I am essentially selling something that people don't know they need,
Yeah.
for the most part,
Yeah.
which creates a hard problem. First, I have to educate them on the fact that this might be something they need, and then we have to get to the sales part where I actually, teach them that this is the best solution.
Yeah.
But typically it comes from awareness. So, a great example is that everyone has what I call cognitive financial programming running in the background, meaning our money stories. How do we grow up with money? What's our relationship to money? So, we hear a lot about abundance and scarcity, but and we're kind of told that like if you just have more abundance, the money's going to flow to you, and scarcity is bad and abundance is good. But what I try and help people see is that both of those things are neutral, right? Whether we have more abundant thoughts or more scarce thoughts, those are really shaped by how we grew up. Right. So if I grew up poor in a very wealthy town, I'm going to be acutely aware of my status compared to everybody else. Right. And it's always going to feel like I don't have enough potentially. and like what we witnessed from our parents growing up and their relationship to money. Like maybe my dad was a penny pincher and my mom was a frivolous spender, and now they spend all their time fighting over those two things. Like that's going to shape how I view money moving forward. So those are the things I really try to help people unlock. And when I ask questions like that, people go, "Oh yeah, like my dad was a penny pincher, and like how does that show up for me?" Like, oh, okay. So starting to kind of unwind those questions, they go, "Oh man, there's a whole ocean of stuff here that I didn't even realize was affecting me." And so it's not really about optimizing my investments. It's figuring out like, whoa, like what did I inherit from my dad that maybe is not serving me? And so that's really what I think attracts people into my program, as they go, "Oh, I see there's a need here to unwind a lot of the stuff that I've never even thought about before."
Yeah, totally. And so, we talk about that internally. We brought on call him a strategist on our team, but he was, they worked for a firm doing leadership training and coaching, of executive firms, or more on the training side. And so one of the reasons we hired him was similar. Is he was having to not only go in and convince companies that they even needed this training, like you said, then he has to convince them that his training and program is what they actually need. And so it comes from a much different place, right? But again, I go back to, and I equate it to somebody sitting in the shoes of an insurance producer, right? Where, sometimes it's not, obviously everybody has to buy insurance. So you have to help that business owner understand something different, right? Why are they buying it? Why are they buying it the way that they do? Is there a better way to buy it? Is there something else they should be thinking about? And then that you can be the person to help them do that, right? And, I think I love your perspective too on just marketing in today's day and age around that, because I think I'm not saying cold calling's dead and all the stuff, right? But people are resonating differently to different things, right? And again, coming from the perspective of exactly what we just talked about, what you're selling, what you're marketing to, how do you find people are resonating with that, right? And what channels are they resonating with? Like, where are you finding them? That type of stuff.
Yeah. So as you've mentioned a couple of times, I'm putting a lot of effort into Instagram. One of the reasons I chose Instagram is because that's where I hang out, right? Like, so I understand what Instagram content tends to resonate. So that's where I started. Now I'm starting to build out Twitter, LinkedIn, all of those other things eventually. But for me, it's starting on one channel at a time. And then the other place that I'm putting a ton of effort is into my newsletter. And I spend a lot of time every week writing very long form content, sharing stories from the trenches, things that have happened to me anecdotally, kind of paired with some financial analysis. And that seems to be really working for people. And so, what happens a lot of times is people will get on my newsletter, be there for a few months and be like, "Oh, okay, I get what this is all about now. And now I'm ready to raise my hand and go, yeah, this is for me." Right. So, by the time I'm speaking to people, they are typically ready to go. They realize there's a need there. They know that there's more out there for them. And either, they are kind of stuck and hitting a glass ceiling and they're ready to break through that. And they know it's going to take a mindset shift, or they're just overwhelmed and they're not even sure what step to take next, but they know there's somebody out there that can help. So those are kind of the two people that are like, okay, but the other thing I like to say is that, like, it's not really helping people go from 0 to 1. Like, most of the people that I work with are very savvy business owners, right?
Yeah.
Like, they've been at it a long time. I would say like my kind of average client is like, 5, 6, 7 million in top line revenue. I've got people, 30, 40, all the way up to billionaires. And some people kind of cracking that 7-figure revenue mark. But like, these are all savvy, very smart people. So it's really maybe going from like a 7 to a 10, or an 8 to an 11, like even exceeding beyond their wildest dreams, right? Like, that's really the deal. So someone coming who is in the beginning stages, like putting everything on credit cards, trying to figure it all out. Like, I'm a little upstream from that, like, brand new entrepreneur. It's more like, how do I optimize? How do I pull some levers and really get the most out of what I've already created?
Do you always operate like in that space? That's a well-defined target market. You know who you want, who you work well with, right? Did you
Totally.
always operate from that capacity? Because I know a lot of people get that scarcity mindset. If I just, niche down is the big buzzword right now, but if I get too targeted, maybe there's not going to be enough prospects, or all the limiting beliefs that are in there. But how'd you look at that as you were figuring out who you were going to work with, or who you worked best with, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's advice to niche down, but it's also like go solve your own problem. Like I'm
Mhm.
targeting me 5 years ago.
So true.
So I can
Yeah.
speak very much to the exact situation they're in because it is me. And I've faced all of the same things. I face scaling problems. I face, okay, what do I do with my money as I'm starting to pull it out of my company? Like I've lived it. So that's who I can speak to the best, right? And so that's primarily. And like, look, I think there's an opportunity eventually as I grow my audience, as I mature the company, like there will be an opportunity to create content further downstream for people who are maybe just starting out, wanting to leave their job and start a company, or inspiring those kind of people. But right now, I think that there's plenty of founders that still need a lot of money mindset work, and so to me, there's kind of no limit to that audience.
Yeah. I think that's very true. And astute. Uh, so answer this kind of as you can, but I'd be curious your perspective. I love asking, the question, right? If you're sitting in the shoes of an insurance producer, right? And they're a couple years in the business, let's say. What are you doing to grow your business, to grow your brand, to get new clients, and to, eventually hit your long-term targets? Like, what are you focused on, and how are you going about that?
Yeah, well, number one, I imagine that insurance producers probably actually face the same problem that I do,
Yeah.
which is for the most part, you may be selling a product that people don't actually know that they need. Like they have a
Yeah.
hazy idea that they should be
Right.
insured, but nobody knows what the right type of insurance is. There's a million types out there, like what's right for them. Um,
It's very
and
true.
so there is an education component, because here's what I find with the vast majority of people coming in my program. Entrepreneurs are two things: they're under liquid and they're underinsured.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a universal truth. Most entrepreneurs take liquidity out of their business and they go invest in real estate, they go invest in startups, they go invest in other thing, and they are woefully under liquid. So the first thing I try to do is get to shore up their liquidity. The second thing is that most don't have a framework to think about insurance. So they don't understand things like key man insurance or buy sell
Yep.
agreements or things like that. And so there is an education component. It's not just life insurance, right? It's not just a term, like knowing the difference between term and life. It's like, hey, what happens if your partner dies and all of a sudden you have to buy out their spouse and family? Like that's something that most people don't even know to be thinking about, right? And I've seen some really unfortunate scenarios where a 50-50 partnership, one of the partners died unexpectedly, and now there is a massive strain on the other partner, not only to continue operating the business with only half the resources, but to scrounge up some cash or find some kind of funding in order to buy out that family, because they don't want the remaining family members in the estate to be an operating partner of their business, right?
Yep.
Okay, what a massive problem that most entrepreneurs just don't even know to think through.
Yeah. And why do you think that is? From I asked that from the standpoint of, I think, or I feel like a lot of times we make assumptions that people understand this stuff. Like these guys are running a big business, or they're running a successful business. They got to have a buy sell, or so we'll ask the question, like, do you have a buy sell? Yeah, oh yeah, we got that in place, and then we just move on. Like, why do you
Right.
think that is?
Yeah, I mean, so this is kind of a symptom of what I call Midas touch syndrome, which is just because someone is good at making money at one specific thing, that does not necessarily mean that their intelligence or skill set transfers to all of the other things. So just because you built an 8-figure business does not mean necessarily that you are extremely financially savvy from an insurance perspective. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Like there's such an ocean of stuff to learn, and it's coming at us from all directions. So not only are we hearing from the insurance guys, we're also hearing from the index fund crew of like, only invest in the S&P, and actually you should be doing whole life overfunded insurance over here. And like there's so much coming at us.
Yeah.
There's actually no way to distill that signal from the noise. And so, even if they have a dim awareness that they need a buy sell, like they may have never taken the time to dig down on that. Because look, let me tell you what every founder hates. It's paperwork, right? There's nothing worse than like, hey, is my operating agreement up to the standards for the size of my company is at now? Like, who's ever going to take time and go, guess what I'm going to work on today? I'm going to update our operating agreement to reflect the new partnership that we have. Like, there's always something else to do. There's always fires to put out. There's always growth. There's always sales. There's always marketing. Like, those are the sexy things everybody wants to work on. Like, nobody wants to work on the infrastructure or the paperwork behind their business.
Yeah. I think that's really well said, because it's a trap for, anybody in a sales role or just an advising role to get into, where, and also I'll say is sometimes business owners, because of that, you get the sense that they don't want you to talk to them about it. But we need to have enough conviction that until we understand it and understand that it is set up well, we need to continue to ask the questions. Now, I'm not saying you berate somebody, right? But if you're sitting in that role, you need to have the conviction that it is very important you have all of this stuff shored up, client. And we may not be able to do it today, but over time, we're going to get a really good understanding of this so that we can help you better understand it, because to your point, I've actually found the more successful business owners have grown quickly or whatever are usually the ones that don't have this stuff shored up, because they're super laser focused and good at something very specific. All this other stuff, they either have people or they should have people or they think they do, that are handling the rest of the business. And sometimes those are the ones that need the help the most, because again, they're head down grinding. But you've got to have the conviction to be the one that's going to ask that question.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, really, back to the question that you asked is like, if you're just starting out, you're a couple years into being a producer, like, what are you going to do? Number one, understand the customer, like truly understand them. Like, don't start selling your solution until you understand that that's actually the best solution for that person.
Yeah.
Right. Most people want to shortcut the sales process and go, well, I've got this hammer. Everything looks like a nail. Instead, go, hey, let me take the time to truly understand this person, and can I serve them? Because one of the best deals. So my wife runs a digital marketing agency, and we have a referral partner that has probably sent, a dozen clients our way.
Yeah.
And the reason they're doing that is because they were actually looking to hire a marketing firm. And my wife essentially went to that meeting and was like, hey, after looking at all your stuff, like, I don't think that we're the best solution for you. In fact, I don't think that Facebook and Instagram marketing are going to do very much for your business. They had just talked to like 5 other firms who were all like, oh yeah, we're going to crush it for you. But she told the truth, right? And now they didn't hire us, but they've sent 12 clients. Like, if you can look at the world through that worldview, like, that's going to take you a lot further than every hammer finds a nail.
Oh, yes, but I'm reading a book right now. If you ever heard of Go Givers Sell More, everybody should read it in our industry, because it's exactly that. It's like any good advice. It's the dumb shit that actually makes sense, right? That you're like, oh, wow, I don't know why I haven't thought about it like that. But, that's the basis of it is, always look to provide value, always look to do the right thing, meaning you might have to send business away because it's not within your expertise, or there's somebody else that can better serve that particular client. But that's the best thing for the client. And ultimately, you're going to get, your return, if you do that enough, will far exceed the commission or the revenue or whatever you could get on that client.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, right? It's like, first seek to understand, and only if you know that your solution is the cure to what ails them, now you can move forward down that path, right? But it all starts with seeking understanding ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to, before we wrap up here, get your perspective on building a community, because again, I think that's not necessarily, there's not too many people doing that in our industry. And so you have built with Unbreakable Wealth, with a newsletter, you're building a community of like-minded people, right? What's the value of that community? How do you look at it? What's your perspective of building that community? And then what has it allowed you to unlock in your business?
So I'll give you a story and tell you why I'm so passionate about building community. When I was investing in some of these deals, and in particular the turnaround that went south, right? If I had gone to one of my friends, one of my peers, and said, not, hey, do you think this is a good deal? But here's my entire portfolio. Here's how I'm currently invested. Here's my liquidity. Here is how all of my assets are laid out. Given that context, here's the deal that I'm looking at. Here's how much I'm thinking of investing. All of my friends, if I'd have gone to Dan Martell and told him that story, he would have laughed me out of the room and been like, no way. Like, based on what you just showed me, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't care what the returns are. This is overweight risk based on what your portfolio should be looking like right now. So the reason I didn't do that is because I didn't have anybody looking over my shoulder. Right. And for me, it's not just that service provider, but it's a peer who actually gets it from the founder's perspective and is doing those same kind of deals. And so when I think about building community, I want to create a breeding ground where, my people can come to each other and go, hey, we all speak the same language. We've all done the work to understand what our values are. We know what our wealth plan should look like. Now I'm going to bring a deal to the group and go, hey, based on what I've laid out as my goals, do you think this deal serves my values? Right? Not do I think this is a good deal? That's a different question.
Different. Yeah. Much different.
Based on what I've said I want to achieve, does this fit into my portfolio? And now we get that peer feedback and go and ask really hard questions, right? Again, from people that have your best interest at heart, and they're not trying to sell you anything or trying to, they have no dog in the fight essentially. So that peer board of advisors, I think, is a critical component to staying on track. So, there's that. B, look, hanging around good people, like good deals tend to get good people, right? And so, as we're thinking about investments, somebody will bring someone to the table, and then now all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 other people that may want to invest because they're all like-minded. So there's massive power in the community from a financial perspective. But bottom line is, like, entrepreneurship is hard. It's lonely. Like, being a founder, like, can be a really, really lonely job. And so finding people that are on the path, that are struggling with the same things, and opening up and being vulnerable with whatever it is that you're struggling with, like, there is massive power in that. And just finding out that you're not alone, like, that to me is the power of community.
Yeah, I love that. Do you find that your clients in your community feel the same way? You're bringing those people together. You're the catalyst to get them together. I would imagine that they're feeling the same or similarly with the other people of your group or of your community, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't view myself as the expert. I view myself as a facilitator in a group of experts, because everyone there has a highly developed skill set, like we spoke to earlier. So first and foremost, I'm going to respect the intellect and the skill level of everybody that's already in the group, and respect the fact that people might be bringing solutions that I've never heard of, right? And so one of my favorite things, I go, hey, what do you think about this investment product? I'm like, I don't know. I've never heard of it before. Let me go research that. I'll tell you what I think. Right. But, like, I'm not afraid to admit that I have no idea. I'm not there to be the teacher or the guru or the one that has all of the answers. Like, we're on this journey together, man. Like, I'm just trying to figure it out too. Like, I don't have it all figured out, but I've learned a lot over the last decade, and let's jump in and figure this shit out together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the reason I wanted to dive in on that is because, again, I think in our industry, we're in such a unique place to be able to do similar things, right? Because we talk to and we work with business owners that are purchasing, again, insurance or life insurance or whatever area of the industry we're in. And there are probably times where that business owner wishes they had other business owners that they could reach out to and talk to, ask questions of. They don't have all the answers, and sometimes they don't want to come to us, right? The quote unquote expert or the quote unquote service provider or vendor, they want to go to a peer and say, hey, I know that Mike's going to tell us this, but what are you doing? And that's so powerful. And if you can just be the one to bring those people together, your value goes up significantly for those business owners. And it doesn't take any additional resources, time and effort, but again, your return on building that community is going to far outpace. And so, again, we don't have it all figured out on some of that, but I definitely resonate with what you're building and how that translates. And we've been trying some unique things in our side of the business to potentially, get there because I think it's the way to go. And I think people are going to continue to clamor for that community, especially with how everything's gotten so digital and, less in person. I think people want that personal connection and are going to continue to. And so, what else that we haven't talked about that's on your mind you'd like to share with folks out there?
Uh, Man, that's a great question. I would say, kind of to your point, is sometimes I hear from people who are like, "Oh man, I think what you're doing is really interesting, but I definitely don't have enough money to qualify, or I'm not wealthy enough to qualify." Usually, it turns out those people are well within the fairway
Yeah.
of people that I work with, right?
Yeah.
So everyone uh, believes, or the other thing they'll do is they'll say like, "Oh yeah, I definitely want to join your group, but I actually need to go read a couple books first, and like
Yeah.
I need to understand better what we're doing." I'm like, no, that's the place for
Yeah.
you. We're actually
Point.
teaching you that stuff here. Like, this is what we're doing. This is the point, right? So it's definitely never too early to kind of check it out and see if it's really for you. The other piece is, you know, I think it's really important to be really curious and give yourself the permission to not optimize. So everyone tends to think that like every dollar needs to be optimized. Like, oh, well, something that people come to me often with, like, I have 100 grand sitting in this checking account. I know I should move it over to be earning 5% over here. And like, hey, that means 5 grand a year. Like, is that 5 grand going to change your life in any meaningful way? And they're like, oh, no. Yeah, right. Like, if keeping 100 grand in your checking account makes you feel safe, like, I want to give you permission to
Yeah.
do that thing, because your money is actually working better for you there on a personal level than it is moving it over to some optimized account and eking out those extra percentage points, right? So really, as long as we're doing most of the right things, we don't need to optimize every dollar and seek the maximum return, right? Let's actually think about, like, how do I want my money to serve me and my values, and let's build out a framework, and then let's kind of stop worrying about it.
Yeah, man, we could go another hour on some of that too, because I get caught up in that where you hear all these people out there talking about, oh, and just to use on that example, you need to invest early and compound, and if you don't, you're screwed, and you hear it constantly, and you're like, I mean, yes, I get that, but everybody's life's different. Everybody has different goals, and to your point, like, I love how you said that you don't have to optimize every penny, and there's sometimes I look at it as like buying a house, right? Is that the best investment over time? Is that what you should do? I don't know. It's perfect, but I love when people are like, "Well, we want to redo the kitchen, but I'm not sure we'll get the return out of it." That we should. Like, can we sell the house for more? I'm like, who cares? Like, are you going to get the $15,000 worth of enjoyment over the next 20 years? Like, probably. Then go do
Yeah.
it if you can. Like, some of that, I think we've gotten way too much content out there around that topic. I'm glad you said that because that's so big for people.
Yeah, I think of it as a return on happiness, right?
Yeah.
Like building. I live in my dream home in Morrison, Colorado. We built it from scratch, designed every inch, and it's hands down one of the best investments I've ever made. And like, does it make sense from a? Well, yeah, it turns out it's done really well. I have it's probably appreciated 25% since I closed, but the return on lifestyle, the return on happiness that I have generated from building this house is infinite. It's countless. It's one of the best things I've ever done. Like, it's become a gathering place for my community. We host founder dinners all the time. We constantly have people from out of town coming to visit. Like, the return that I've gotten on those dollars goes so far beyond any financial return. Like, to me, that's the best way to spend our money, right? Like, I can't imagine a better investment than that. And so just giving people that permission to, like, let's optimize for lifestyle, because, turns out there's better things to seek than just alpha.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Again, I could keep going, but I think we're over time probably. But man, I appreciate it. This is great, and I think everybody hopefully took a lot out of it. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best place? Where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, check me out on Instagram at mbrown.co. And you could sign up for my newsletter at unbreakablewealth.com/newsletter. Love to have you. Like I said, I put a ton of time into writing that every month or every week. And it's one of my favorite things I do. So definitely love to have you there.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll be seeing each other in a couple months here at Empire Builders, so I'm excited for that too.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Can't wait to get to Kelowna.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, see you.